everyone, and welcome. My name is John Doehring, and this is ZoomTRAK. Good afternoon, N-scalers everywhere, and welcome to the June 2024 edition of ZoomTRAK by NRail. NRail is the organization promoting N-scale model railroading. That includes modular modeling in N-TRAK, T-TRAK, and Free-moN, home and club layouts, and indeed all of N-scale. NRail is focused on spreading the knowledge, camaraderie, and joy of model railroading, and of course, all of it in the normal scale. So again, everyone, welcome. As usual, we've got a strong lineup this afternoon to share with you. Today, that includes a short video to kick things off with T-TRAK, an update on the Farragut loop in Free-moN, Part 6, electrical, with Lee Calkins, prototypical operations in T-TRAK with Bob Shafer, and then Andy Zimmerman will be here to present the Facebook drawing winners. And don't forget, as always, our participant poll at the end of today's program. And now, as we get started, let's have a couple of comments from Bruce Alcock. Bruce?
Thank you, John. I just want to point out that we're expanding our partner program, and we'll have a new page up this weekend with some additional partners, and some of them are now starting to offer discounts. So make sure you check that out. And our list is expanded. We've added some T-TRAK module folks to the list, and that's available on our website. Just go to nrail.org, and at the bottom of the page there's a partners list. So with that, I will now go to
Fantastic. All right. Fantastic.
Great Northern went to Florida. Yeah.
Well, that looked to me like a nice example of modeling and pretty high-end production value on the music there. Well done. Well done. Cool video. Cool video. All right. That's inspiring me to get involved in T-TRAK. Hadn't done that yet. All right. Our next up is to talk about the Farragut loop. Free-moN and the electrical. Lee, you with us?
Hello and welcome to the Farragut Loop Update, Part 6 on electrical. Since I haven't done a loop update in a while, there are 5 other loop updates. They're available on the NRail YouTube webpage, or YouTube page. And there's ones about Free-moN in there and the various parts of Farragut. Farragut was a naval base at the south end of Lake Pend Oreille in North Idaho that existed during World War II. We've gone over a whole bunch of how to build modules and track work and stuff like that. So today we're going to dive into electrical. Here's a brief overview of what the actual Farragut loop looked like according to the blueprints that are available at the museum there in Farragut. Here's the modules that I designed for Farragut loop. These are all Free-moN standard compliant pieces and sections. So first we're going to go over the Free-moN wiring that is required for Free-moN modules. We use DCC on everything. It's preferred that we have it set up to use Digitraks, but it is not specified that you have to use Digitraks. All of our churnouts, the point rails need to be powered so that we don't rely just on the stock rails touching the point rails. The bus wires, we use 12 gauge wire for the track bus, and we use 24 gauge or heavier for the feeders. The track bus needs to terminate at the end with Anderson power poles, and they're stacked hood up, tongue down, and it's left over right. I've got a picture here I'll show you in just a second. We use red Anderson power poles to distinguish from the accessory bus. Here's a little diagram I have written on my wall. If you look at the end of the module, the rail on the left is your top Anderson power pole, and the rail on your right is rail on the right is the lower Anderson power pole. I've got this written on the wall so that every time I build a module I can look at it and it's easy for me to remember. The accessory bus is also 12 gauge. And we use black Anderson power poles to distinguish those, and we put those Anderson power poles right next to each other so that the tongues are up on both and the hoods are down on both. We use a Loconet bus, which is the 6-wire RJ12 phone jack along the modules, and we use that for throttle control and controlling other various devices that may or may not need Loconet. So here's our tub of supplies that I have. We've got green Anderson power poles for when we run ground wires between the modules. I've got plenty of RJ12 connectors. I've also got the blue ones at the top are spade connectors. There's my red and black Anderson power poles, and for me I've got purple connectors that I use for special things when I need them. And here's my soldering iron that I use for soldering the wires to the track. Electrical tester, make sure I've got continuity through everything correctly. Here's my terminal blocks. I've been switching over to more of the black style ones shown on the upper version of the picture there. This is a cable tester that I use regularly to test all my cables to make sure that they are built correctly. The blue tool on the side is the cable builder for building the Loconet cables. I've got wire cutters in there. I've got a crimper in there. The orange one on the side is an Anderson power pole crimper that I use regularly. For clamping modules together, I use, these are Harbor Freight $6 vice grips. And we use those for clamping modules together. It makes fast and easy assembly for clamping modules together and to take down at the end of the event. So here is one of the bus wires that I have built for one of my modules. This has the standard track bus in the red power poles and the accessory bus in the black power poles, and then I've got a second accessory bus in here, which is the yellow wire, and the yellow wire is going to take power from my accessory bus, run it through a bridge rectifier, and put out DC power. So I can power my switches and lights in my buildings and my caboose village. Here's all the wires for most of the modules. We've got 11 modules in this set, so they all need their own bus wires. So there's a pile of bus wires that I've prepped and gotten ready. The curves are fairly simple. It's just a single track, and I've got 5 of those curves. We start by putting the feeder wires down through the top of the module. I'm just using 22 gauge feeders. Here's some more views of all the different modules getting feeder wires. Underneath, I didn't terminate any of these with the terminal blocks. I just have them mounted underneath with the little clips. Come across, I've got my LocoNet cable in there. There's my feeder wires dropping through the foam. Getting everything mounted in there. For me, most of the time I just strip a small piece of wire and I solder my feeder wires to the bus wires. A lot of people prefer a terminal strip, and then they combine everything in a terminal strip in the middle of the module. And there's everything buttoned up. I've got Velcro straps for Velcroing all my cables so that they don't come loose and drag and get snagged during transportation and storage. And there's a picture of the bus wires for the track stacked tongue up, or hood up, tongue down. And there's the accessory bus Anderson power poles stacked side by side. Now the little yard module has switches on it, and that makes it a little more difficult. And for the bus wires, again, I drop them through the top. Right there I show a little drill bit that I have for putting down through the wood, and if it's in foam, I usually grab that little knitting needle that I stole from my wife, and I just hook the end of the little 22 gauge wire on the end of it, and I push it through the module and pull the wire through. And you have to have feeders on every piece of track that you install. You can't just install one set of feeders and then put in 4 sections of track. We need to have it on all sections. That way we're ensuring that we're getting connectivity through to the rails and not relying on rail joiners or other things that can become corroded and lose connectivity. Just more views of the stuff. So for my switches, I decided to try something new. I decided to use Tam Valley micro singlets. So the little board in the middle of the picture here is the Tam Valley micro singlet. The buttons off to the side are the Tam Valley buttons. They've got a red and a green diode on it. Now these Tam Valley prefer to have DC power, so in the bottom corner of the blue board there with the numbers, digital numbers on it, is a bridge rectifier. That bridge rectifier will take 4 to 24 volts of AC or DC power, and it'll convert it to 4 to 20 volts of DC power. And you can adjust the voltage with the knob on the front of the board there. There's a picture of all the micro singlets. I've got two of the buttons for each side, for each switch, so I have a button on each side of the module, as these modules can be used from either side. And to mount everything, I've got 3D printed boards, or little mounting brackets there. We're using servos, and the servos are in the packages in the bottom. And like I said, with the turnouts, you have to make sure that the turnouts are, the frog is powered, and those black switches there that are touch sensitive, when they're closed, they connect one wire, and when they're open, they connect another wire. And we use those mounted to the purple brackets, and the servo motor will actually touch and detect those and cause them to change the frog power. Just a closer view on the servos and the little connecting brackets that we've 3D printed. And those are available on, I believe, on Thingiverse. You can find those brackets. I've got everything wired up as a test bed to make sure that all of my servos work. I do have a video on my YouTube channel. Look for Oregon Shortline on YouTube. I've got a video of all this working and pressing the buttons and watching those servos throw. So see there, the arm on the servo where we put the wire to throw the turnout also contacts the contact on the board, on the 3D printed board. And that board is set up so that I can put two of those on, so if I ever decide to add signals or detection or something to this board, I can put another one on the other side and detect with it as well. It's just a top view of it. So I mount the micro singlet underneath the module and run a power wire over to my buck converter and my terminal block for all of my other micro singlets. And there's a picture of the terminal wires there in the junction. So this yard module's 2 modules wide, and so I don't want to put in 2 buck converters just to run the micro singlet on the other module. And that's where my purple Anderson power poles come in. They're running my personal accessory bus between these 2 modules. And these 2 modules will always go together. There's no way that they could ever not go together. Getting everything installed, getting the servos all wired in, and getting ready to stick them up through the layout to mount them and get them attached to the switches. We've got things are moving along. Now on my bigger module with the throat on it for the loop, we've got an auto reverser for the loop, and I need to be able to adjust that auto reverser, and that's what that double pull double throw switch is for, so I can turn that auto reverser on or off, because sometimes this isn't a loop and I don't need an auto reverser. Now we're getting the buck converter installed for the bigger module and sending the power back out to the boards. The terminal strip there has got main track power, accessory bus power, modified accessory bus power, which is the DC, and then it's got the auto reversing power that goes into that as well. For the LocoNet, I decided to use, or for the throttle panels on the modules that's required for the standard, I've decided to use 3D printed brackets with just a little RJ12 2-to-1 connector in them. So we can plug 2 wires in the back and 1 wire in the front. This is a universal system. It'll work with any system that uses the 6-wire flat cable, whether that's NCE or Digitrax or anybody else that wants to use that, because they're wired straight through, and you'll be able to plug in whatever system you want on the backside. I went through my fascia, and before I put the fascia on, I cut out all of the places where my micro singlet buttons are going to be and where my throttle panel buttons are going to be, so they're recessed and won't be as likely to be damaged in storage or in shipment. Just another view of it. Starting to get them all installed. I installed them and then I pulled them back out and painted behind them, so that's what you see in the top photo. Continuing the progression of getting all these installed. I've got them pulled out and I'm painting behind them and all the recesses behind it so that the little gaps don't show wood behind it. I'm getting them all screwed back in. All the different panels screwed back in. So this is the underside of the yard module. It isn't complete. I've still got other wires in there. I don't have the LocoNet cable run through there, but it's moving along. So there's the two toggles under there. The one toggle turns the auto reverser on and off. And the way a reversing section works is you come off that switch and your A and B rails on one side are opposite of what they are on the other side of your switch. And so the other switch right there that's mounted in the whiteboard reverses the polarity on the branch line for this module, so that if we use it as a yard module with a branch line, all the tracks are powered correctly and the auto reverser is disconnected. And this kind of shows the diagram. The purple circle is where the main track power comes in. The green line is where I have my insulated rail joiners, and everything beyond that, it can be powered by the auto reverser. The red circled line is those tracks are opposite of the blue circled line. And so when it's a branch line like it shows here, I have to switch the polarity on the red and disconnect the auto reverser, and that's what those toggles underneath are for. Here's a picture of it all completed. It's a rat's nest. I'm not the best at wire management. This one's a whole lot better than some of the other ones I've done over the years. All the Tam Valley micro singlets are installed, all the servos are installed, all the track power's in there. All the accessory bus wires, all the track bus wires, everything's all in there and ready to be operational. I've numbered all of the servos and micro singlets so we can keep track of them. Try to leave a little bit of notes as I go. There's a better view of it. The N versus the R that you see under there is normal and reversed. So if it's thrown to the N side, it's set up for the yard as a branch line. Reversed is set up as the reverse loop. Oh, and the auto reverser on this is a frog juicer a dual frog juicer that they have set up for doing auto reversing or running two different frogs. And we've got it set up for auto reversing a layout. And I've been in several layouts already, and I haven't had any issues with it. It seems to be working fairly well. LocoNet cables run throughout the module and is progressing along. This is the little 45 that comes off of the main yard. We've got LocoNet running underneath it, and all of our bus cables for the accessory bus and the track bus. Now onto the caboose village. The caboose village, I've got 7 or 8 of these Walters cabooses that I don't use anymore. I had them and I had been using them, but Blueford came out with their bay window cabooses that I really like, and so I had all these cabooses trying to figure out what to do with them. And since Farragut is a state park now, and there's caboose villages at other state parks across the United States or other places, I decided to put in a caboose village here. Now, if you've done any DCC work on older Cato locomotives or Atlas locomotives that have a split board, you end up with these little light boards that come out, and they've got a resistor on them already, and I figured I would use them to light all these cabooses. So I took all the shells apart on all the cabooses, removed the weights from the cabooses. I'll use those somewhere else if I need weight in a car or something, because I don't need it here anymore. I then soldered on wires onto those little boards so that we could power the boards. Now these boards are directional. They go either forwards or reverse, so I had to make sure that all the boards were facing the right way when I finally hook them up at the end. I drilled a hole through the base of the caboose and glued the light in various places in the caboose. So different windows light up in different cabooses depending on where the light is at. Here's one of the finished products on a Milwaukee Road caboose. I also have a passenger station that's going in, and it is also lit. So that accessory bus wire that's running the micro singlets will also run the lights for this passenger station and those cabooses. There's quite a few lights in this building. So this is all part of the electrical, is figuring out where all my lights are going, and now we've got everything all wired up. It's packed in the van and it's headed off for its first event. There's snow on the ground. And there it is. It's set up. It's operational. I don't have fascia on it at this point on a lot of the modules. I do have a couple. This is an event in Spokane, Washington that happened in the winter of, or March of 2023. And put the modules through its paces, make sure everything works electrically before I get into scenery and ballasting. Because if I need to adjust anything, it's a whole lot easier to adjust stuff before I run it, or before I put scenery on it. There's our little branch line that heads off to the industrial yard that we're not going to model. But I've got it there taped up and ready. When I put the fascia on, I'll trim the track and finish that end. Coming around the loop. All the micro singlets are working fine. All the switches are throwing great. The caboose is right there, staged in the wrong spot. But eventually they'll be on the near module right above the micro singlets. More views of the modules as we go around. And so the next episode, possibly 2, will be as we dive into the scenery and attaching all the fascia to this Farragut loop. So if you have any questions, go ahead and let me know. I'm available on Facebook and other places. So thanks for watching, and we'll turn the time back over to John Doehring.
All right. All right. Interesting video. Once again, lots of electronics for me to learn how to do. Very good stuff. I don't think Lee's with us live today. I didn't realize that was going to be video. So,
No, he isn't.
and I don't see any questions in the chat. Anybody have a comment or a question they'd like to ask that we can pass along to Lee? Okay, I think then Bruce will be ready to go to our next stop here. And this is, let's see, we're going to be looking at operations in T-TRAK with Bob Shafer. And Bob, I do know is with us live, right?
Yeah, hi.
There you go.
This is something I've been working on for about a year. And the concept is simple. We want to somehow do real operations in T-TRAK. And I know it sounds like an oxymoron. And what I'm going to share with everybody today is going to be some T-TRAK modules I've designed. They're examples. That's all they are examples of what might be done. And then also look at what kind of an operations session you can create. And when we get down to the end, I'll have about 35 trains and 40 people working. So it'll be kind of interesting, I hope. And if you're ready, I'll share my screen.
Go ahead.
And now we just here, slideshow from first slide. Okay, and I hope everybody is seeing that. This is part of a clinic that I'm hoping to do in Long Beach. And I've skipped a lot of what I'll present there because I think everybody knows about T-TRAK. And we can go directly into types of operations. And this is what T-TRAK is roundy, what we call roundy round. But at the same time, most of us also have a loop on our home layouts. Even if it's a point-to-point, you'll still have some type of a loop so that you can have continuous run. and I've got a small N-scale switching layout, but I still have the loop going around in the back so I can run trains on a continuous basis. Yards. Trains only originate at yards or terminals. Now, we also use staging yards to create more, to have more trains available, but these are trains that are implied to just be running through our area. And mainline, this is going to be a particularly difficult thing to execute because meets are quite difficult on T-TRAK. We have, again, trains are originating at yards or terminals, but they traverse the main line. We have local and industrial switching, and you don't need a very big T-TRAK layout to have a nice local switching area. You can do that on something the size of a dining room table, maybe a little bit larger. Passenger operations I really like because they're so diverse and you have so many different things that you can accomplish. Now, when we talk about prototypical operations, we talk, what's more important? Well, we know what the railroads did. They move cars from one location to another. You're in a yard or a terminal, the train is built, goes out on the main line, and travels to another yard or terminal where the individual cars are classified and built into new trains. And that's all railroads really do. But how they do it is where we get into interesting operational issues. And we've all been in an operating session where you're handed a rule book from 1957. The layout is prototypical to the region. Here is the rule book, and here is your operating instructions of what you're going to do. One railroad I operated on, we were all handed a flag man. And when we stopped the train to do anything, you put your flag man out on the rails to signify that you were now working. And this is, we have different levels of this, and people get very invested in their particular method of operation. Okay, let's talk about some problems that we'll have with T-TRAK. First, you have a limited depth of seam. You've only got 14 inches. Unless you can provide an opposite shallow depth module or create a full depth module, and you'll see that some people like to do that. Or you can have it be the end of a layout, but generally you're kind of limited. Also, the red and yellow lines are community tracks. The general understanding is if you bring a module, you can run your train, which means if we're trying to do an operations session, somebody else may be running their train, and it becomes a problem. And of course, junctions allow for more yellow lines. But this is the one point that is going to be important later. If you bring all the modules that contain a single yellow line loop, that loop can be considered dedicated, and we'll talk about that. The authority used a red line. The most common method is Mother May I. You know, this is what you see at clubs, but in most large layouts too. Hey, can I run my train now? I have seen very seldom a strict timetable. You know, you get to run your train from 8 to 10 p.m. or whatever the timetable is. But whatever we do is going to require a lot of interactions with other people. Now, there's also spectators. We don't get this at club. You know, when you go to someone's basement to operate, there's no one else there, or very rarely anyone else there, maybe a spouse or two. But we have a lot of people come to our operations, both rail and non-rail people. And I consider this a teaching moment. If you're switching a yard, this is an opportunity to explain, well, what are you doing? You're blocking the outgoing train in a certain way. And why are you doing that? Or if you're in a terminal and you're going ahead and switching trains to different tracks, why? What are you accomplishing? And this could be, I think, could really add to the interest in railroading amongst everyone, and operations in particular. Okay, trains only travel in one direction. The yellow lines are clockwise, the red line is counterclockwise, and this will eliminate meets unless the entire layout is only modules that we have brought, or the layout organizers will give us a specific time when we can have two-way traffic. And then this is a personal observation. I think most trains just travel too fast. And this is just a copy, take a screenshot from a spreadsheet. But if you think of a quad module, it's just about 4 feet, 49.5 inches, or 48.5 inches, I'm sorry. And let's see, blow this up a little bit. And what you can see here is that at normal operation speeds, it takes a long time to travel that. And this is another problem of having other trains on the track, because our operations will slow down the other people. Just a quick comment on era. It defined how we use the main line, how a train is blocked, and how the train is worked. And I've got a few more slides talking about why I'm particularly partial to the late 30s, but it's just the fact that you get such a variety of cars, such a variety of operations that are not present in other time periods. Now, this is a layout that was from Kansas City, and you can see it's really large. And, the red line traces the full exterior, and there are about 12 yellow lines. I'm not sure I counted all of them correctly. But you do get some really large T-TRAK layouts. And of course, what I want to do is hijack this layout where it becomes the main line, and then we stick some operations in there. Now, everything I'm going to show you is built with T-TRAK. You've got a crossings, you've got the double crossover switch and the number 6 turnout. And the difference between them, of course, is they create different spacing. Although that's not totally true. You can get 33 millimeter spacing off of a number 6. It just creates some nasty curves. These are the curves that are available. The red line is 315 millimeters and is available from Kato in 45-degree segments or 15-degree segments. The yellow line has a radius of 282 millimeters. And then the last one there is a very large radius that returns the number 6 turnout to a straight track. Now, what I'm going to show you, there's almost any straight length is possible. And I do have a couple of examples where we have non-operational track just for appearance's sake. And if you can't get the correct one, you've got an expansion track. And this is very, very useful if you're, because when you bring two modules together in T-TRAK, they have to be exactly straight, head on to each other. But if you have a diagonal track, you can avoid that by using the expansion track across the joint. And then we're going to have singles, either both light singles and also sensors, so that when we're running operations, we know the trains know where the other trains are, and you can, whether you have to wait for a meet or not. And this is a very typical small T-TRAK layout. It's about 28 inches wide by about 5.5 feet, and it would fit on a dining room table. And this is sort of a typical home T-TRAK layout that people might have when they're just getting into the hobby. And my basic concept is we're going to stick our operation modules into an existing layout. So here is an interchange that is built into that existing layout. And again, you can see there's several things here to look at. The first is that we have some non-operational track. That's the other line coming in. And then we have the two number 6s leading to a opportunity to exchange track. And this is my basic template. And you can see it is 3 double modules wide with 2 junction modules at the end. And these are converted junction modules. They don't really, it's not the standard one. It's 2 inches. It's 2 feet. And you've got, again, now the opportunity for singling. You have a passing track, that's the purple line. You've got a sensor, so we know where people are. And then this is where we're going to have our operations occur. The sort of orange line, which is just the yellow line, that we now own. The green lot portion is the backdrop, and you could use it on both sides. Now, what I would really do is I would not build this as doubles. I would build the two junctions as doubles. And then the center ones I'd build as very large doubles, and then the other side of them, the back side here, I would build as doubles, but only about 8 inches deep. And this is another version of it. Go back a second. Notice that we needed this because this hangs off the end of the module. We need to add almost 2 inches to it. Now, that isn't usually going to be a problem with T-TRAK. It's permitted, but it does add a little bit to it. Whereas if you do this, and what I've done here is I've used a 315 millimeter return track to return back to parallel. And there's some arguments that might create a relatively nasty S-curve, which it will, but I think it is manageable, especially at reasonable speeds. The main line won't be affected at all. So let's look at a staging yard. And this staging yard uses that template. It's a little bit larger. I had to put a triple in here in order to get all the wiring in. And notice we've missed it by about 2 inches. So I would really build it as a triple. And then the next one a little smaller. But you come in and then you, depending upon your direction of travel, go eastbound or westbound out of staging, making the loop. And this is, I think, a better staging yard. You get 7 tracks instead of 10, but it all fits on a single depth module. This is only 14 inches. Again, we've got our singling and our sensors. And it is, I think, a little bit nicer track, or a nicer staging yard. And again, it's completely done with Kato parts. Now, I realize with this much track, some people would build it using flex track and then have the Kato track just on the ends. And again, these are examples. Please do not look and try to analyze them and say, oh, that's good or bad. These are just examples. A siding is a single depth module that will have a station on it and maybe a couple of industries. And this is the siding that I'm using as my example for my demonstration here. And again, you come into it. There's I used a double crossover switch primarily to keep for size considerations. But a train could stop at the station on the main line and just stop for a second to discharge passengers and mail, or a freight train could go up and set out or pick up a car. And again, remember examples. Here is the village of Smallville. This is actually bigger than my home switching layout. But once you're in it, there you're going, and different people would do this different ways. but you can see you're in it. You're on the yellow line now, which becomes the runaround track, although there is a runaround track built in here. And you can have a lot of switching on. You could have a full 2-hour op session just with this. Here's our town of Midville, and it's a little bit larger than Smallville. And so we've got more switching opportunities. I'm kind of proud of this one. This is the Port of Rock. And now we had to move the passing siding to the other side, and that creates some problems for the software that I'm going to demonstrate. But coming out, once you're into it, you've got on this end, you got a fishing village and a cannery and a car float. The car float would be a lot of fun in operations because you have to load it 1 or 2 cars at a time to maintain your balance. On the other side, you've got a someplace for coal loading and then grain unloading. And the coal loading is actually elevated a little bit. And then we've got some transshipment warehouses. And so you can have different types of operations. I would love to see some person who is interested in the steel industry build a steel plant. And you could have all the operations that go through a steel industry or some other big industry like that. And here is my example of a division yard. The main areas, in total, it uses 5 double width modules again. And you come in, notice when you come in that we have the diagonal lead tracks, so you can have trailing point switching regardless if you're going eastbound or westbound. You have engine servicing, and then you have all the other cars that you would have in a yard. You've got layover housing. I put a lot of weigh scale and refrigeration and ice plants and a power plant and livestock feed and rest. And this is really important when you're doing, again, if you go back a little bit in time to the 30s, you can have some really interesting operations going on. Particularly with cabooses, because remember at that time period, the cabooses were assigned to crews, not to trains. Now for passenger operations, we'll assume some, again, I like 39, both REA and Railroad Express Agency and Pullman are dominant. Most passenger trains will be a mix of heavyweight and streamliners. Streamliners were introduced in 35, but the railroads didn't throw out their heavyweights, so they just used them on their lesser used passenger routes. Pass-through terminals, the trains aren't turned, and stub ends, they are. I was not able to come up with a pass-through that worked. I couldn't come up with an example of one. For T-TRAK, I do have a stub end terminal that is huge. Again, I like this because the road engines will be steam and the yard switchers will be diesels. And an interesting point, the yard switchers are sometimes owned by the terminals or by their respective clients. And so again, there's some operational interest that can be built in. Now, how do you get into the yard? I've got two quick ways. This is a triple that is coming off the red main line, coming into a crossover that then goes through an elevated, under an elevated parking lot and into the terminal. And the next one is the end of I try not to use many end caps, but this is coming off instead of an end cap, just same exact thing, different trackage. And here, heaven help us, is the passenger terminal. When I presented this to my club a month ago, and one of the guys said, you've got taken 10 pounds of stuff and put it in a 5-pound bag. So again, what we have up here at the top is 2 arrival and departure tracks so that there's room for trains to hold or be there. And again, this is the coach yard on the bottom and the terminal yard on the top. And here on this side, we've got, the way it works is you've got trains that will come in and go into this portion of the yard, which is the reverse loop. So when a train first enters, it pulls around until its tail is past here. Then it backs into the appropriate terminal platform. And then the same process is used for the switchers. They pick up trains off the terminal yard, come around here, and this is the clearance point for the coach yard. They come around the reversing loop and then back in to the coach yard here and down into the coach yard. And notice in the coach yard, you've got the post office, railway express, freight warehouses, the commissary, and the Pullman company. I also have a unlabeled track here. I should have put a label on it. That's for private cars. If you remember during this time, the private railroad cars and the business railroad cars were like the private jets of today. And if you were one of the many billionaires of that time period, you had your own, instead of a jet, you had your own railroad car. And of course, it had to be stored someplace. Now, we've got steam servicing, and then the ready track for the steam engine. Over here, we have the trades and all of the repair operations, upholstery, plumbing, mechanical, electrical, and diesel servicing. And then you've got yard washers and car washer, yard office, someplace you have to have layover housing. So that's essential. It's one example of how you might fit a terminal into this. Okay, let's take these pieces and build an operating session.
Bob, this is John. We're at 5 o'clock, so I don't know how much more you have in here, but.
Okay. Oh my God. Thank you for telling me. I'll go fairly fast. This is a fictional railroad. that I've named the Arizona Railroad. It has interchanges. And what I did is I popped that railroad onto 26. I got 26 tables, and it's almost 11 miles. And this is what it will look like. But remember the red line. And so when I'm doing this, I've got interchanges and I've got all my terminals and things and yards and ports and whatever that are there. And we're going to create, this is software that I wrote. And if anybody's interested in being not a beta tester, it's still in development. But send me an email, Bob at GVR Club. And you basically create your layout, and then you create an operating session, and you make decisions about staging, about yards, about terminals, those data input, and then you create results. And the software produces a train schedule. And this is just, we had 35 trains in this one random event. And this is the first 7 trains. What happens is that the trains you have some trains ready at time 0 that can leave the yards, and you have other trains that will depart at a later time. And you have track warrants. So this is train number 2. And of course, the last warrant is void, and then the train 2 departs the Sonoran Yard eastbound at time period 0, and takes 16, whatever it is, to get to the Tucson industrial area where they'll do switching. Then they'll depart the turn and end up back at the other yard as it ends. And this is a little bit more complicated track warrant. This is for a passenger train. And again, this is train 4. Again, we had 35 of them. And this is leaving the Phoenix Union Terminal at time period 0, and it gets to Holbrook, and it stops, lets passengers out, swaps mailbags, and then it proceeds on. It stops at the Kingman siding and the Globe siding. And if you remember, there were 6 sidings, but we're only going to stop at 3 of them, and which ones we stop at is kind of random. And so we ended up in this particular session getting 18 trains out of staging, 4 that go to industries, and 8 that come out of yards. Now, the 4 trains that come out of, that go to the industries originated a yard, but I've had them separate here because they're really not making full loops. We got 5 trains coming out of the terminal, one of which is coming out at time 0. And it's a total of 45 for this session. And again, by changing the random factors, you can have up to 40, 45 trains in one session for one 2-hour session. The crews, well, staging is always complicated. How many crews do you need? But there could be as many as 30 jobs there. Industries will take 8. The yards will take 6. The terminals will have 3 people. And so we have a total of about 27 to 30 jobs, maybe as many as 40 on this one layout. And we're going to need 2 or 3 spotters probably just to run around and make sure that people are handling meets appropriately and things like that. And that's kind of what I had prepared for today. I don't have the second part of the software working yet where meets are enabled. Questions, comments? Does it seem possible?
Hey, Bob,
I know I was doing a fire hose routine at the end.
Andy?
so Bob, did you consider using full width modules, the 28-inch modules?
That's what a lot of it is. Most of the, let me get out of this. Most of the examples were in fact full width modules. Some
15 deep, but the actual ones that are 28 table width deep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's you're going to have some choices. You're either going to do some really fancy track work or some really fancy carpentry. And to get some of this stuff and do it so it'll fit in the back of a station wagon or an SUV, it's going to be big.
Bob, did you say is the software is something that you're creating yourself?
Yes, I've written it myself.
Okay, so if people want to know more about that, they need to get directly in touch with you then.
Yeah, just slip me an email and Bob at gvrr.club.com, and that's just Green Valley Railroad Club. And I maintain the web page. I'm not a very good programmer, quite frankly. So, but it would be available. Thank you, John. I would.
.com or .org? Because I thought I read .org.
It's .org. I'm sorry.
Oops, I got it wrong.
Bob at gvrrclub.org. No, he said it. He said .com.
I said .com. It was my fault.
All right. It's 10 after here, so I think we better go to the poll and make sure that we give people a chance to log off if they need to get back out to that yard work. So
okay.
We'll go ahead and go to the poll, and then I'll get set up for this giveaway.
All right. All right, Andy, are you there?
Yep, I'm ready to go whenever. All right, so what we're going to do here is give you some quick background. We did a membership drive for T-TRAK, for the official T-TRAK Facebook page. We started at, we had about 1,930 members, and we were doing a drive to 2,000. So I set a date of June 1st. So midnight May 31st would have been the cutoff. And so what I'm doing right now, and hopefully, is that still sharing? Can you see that screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So so when I first started, I said that I was just going to give away a single, right? Because I mean, I bought one, had one from CMR, and I would send it to whomever. And then our partners jumped in. Not only CMR, but T-TRAK by Denniston jumped in with 2 end caps and model railroad benchwork. They jumped in and said that they were going to give away 3 doubles towards this drive. So I was trying to figure out a way to do this, attract members, and then use some of that momentum both for T-TRAK and for NRail. So the members, there are 80 members that are listed. The 80 members that are listed will be in the next screen. So what we're going to do first is we're going to figure out what we're giving away right now. So let's go ahead and do that. And I don't know why it has that goofy music, but so we're going to give away, it looks like gonna give away an end cap, I think. Oh, double. Okay, so we're gonna give away a double. All right, so we're gonna remove that and we're gonna go here, and this is a listing of all 80 people. So we're gonna go ahead and spin for a double.
Okay, yeah, because
How long is that gonna be?
18, so at bare minimum, we can be there for 4 days every.
So it looks like the winner of the double is gonna be Jack Copeland. All right, so we'll remove his name. Go back to the second one,
Down the 16th evening, and that's it.
and we're gonna pick up a, looks like end cap. Okay. So for the end cap, we're gonna go ahead and spin for that. And
We can,
8 times for wins the end cap.
he gets a little stressed when we take him to school and like worried about getting some stuff, so we'll see about that. But either way, we'll be there for at least 4 days.
And now what are we gonna do here?
See if you can win one for the moderator here.
All right, so it looks like a single from CMR. So, and see who comes up with on here. Looks like the single goes to Donnie Jenkins. Okay, remove Donnie's name. You can go back.
Yeah.
I wanted this as random as possible.
Nice sized houses.
Okay, so a double.
People stuff too, and you know, you do the math on it, it works out better than
All right, so there's another double in there. So yeah, add that back. All right. So for a double,
and you just ping it to me and I'll tell you what thing, because we've made a fair few places around the area too.
double looks like, oops, right on the line there. Dan and Kamakubo. K-U-B-O. All right, 2 more. Okay. So for an end cap, it's going to be, let's remove Dan.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Like Vince Porter. End cap, Vince Porter.
One thing I will remind you of is you have to make restaurant booking, so
And the last double.
month in advance.
We're gonna spin for that.
Yeah, if not longer. Exactly.
Well, Vic McT almost had it. Stephen Hughes.
Oh.
All right, so that's all of the modules that were donated. So
Andy, we had a question about who the 80 names were.
so the 80 names came from the minute we started the membership drive at 1930 members until it ended, until we got over 2,000. But the end date was midnight, May 31st. So
Okay.
the objective was to get to 2,000 members by May 31st, and we actually got to more than 2,000 members by then. As a matter of fact, as of this moment, we're up to 2,115 members. but not all those people were included. It was just from that date, from 1930 to the cutoff on May 31st midnight.
Yeah. I put that in the chat. I thought that's what it was. Basically, the
And
last little group of new members.
So
Right.
I'm hoping that we can do a few more of these. I'm even hoping that we can do some here for the NRail members. So so stay tuned.
Yeah, thank you for that, Andy. And thanks to all of the sponsors. That's quite generous. And I know there's some good customers on here, but just encourage everybody to think about purchasing those T-TRAK models from one of our vendor partners. Very, very good. All right, folks, we've gone a little bit over, and it's a nice summer evening here. So I think we're going to release everybody to their own recognizance, and we'll see you all again in July. Have a good evening.
Hey, thank you.
Good night.
See you in Bethlehem.